The sweet potato, loaded with vitamins, fibre and minerals and phytonutrients, it can really bolster the mind and body. Come on blackbirds, out you come. Come on. Go on, out you come. Come on. Come on. I know the grapes are sweet. If you'd like to grow them in your own garden, then choose a nice sunny spot. The foliage can be rather attractive and also act as a good ground cover.
On a hill
near a wood,
where nobody goes,
up a track,
through a gate,
The food forest grows.
with secrets and treasures for everyone's pleasure, and Rob's discovery.
Unlike the annual white so-called normal potato, which incidentally is from the nightshade family, the sweet potato is from a completely different family of plants, the morning glory family. And the blackbirds are still in here, and although distantly related, they still have edible tubers like this one. Sweet potatoes come in a wide variety of colours. You get deep purples and sometimes always blue ones. These are a deep orange colour, which I love. These are Evangeline, and I've had great success with growing them here, although lots of people have better success with Georgia Jet or the not very creatively named T65. Oh! Boiled or baked, in soups or stews or casseroles, desserts, breads or stir-fries, or even raw, the nutritious and versatile sweet potato really is a must-have in any edible garden. I shall now share with you what I know about how to grow your own. Peach. You can eat these raw too. Excuse me. See you in a minute. That was a good peach. The last frosts of May and the first frosts of October bookend the 6-month window when you can grow sweet potatoes. There are 3 phases of growing sweet potatoes that you cycle through annually between the first and the last frosts. Phase 1, that is growing the root sprouts that are called slips. They are these beautiful things just here. Now you can buy these online or from nurseries, but they're quite expensive, so it's best to keep your own tubers, the sweet potatoes themselves. Just keep a few from the previous year, and then you can use those to sprout these from. About 6 weeks before it's time to plant the sweet potatoes outdoors in your area, place the tubers in a compost-filled container somewhere warm, like a greenhouse. Now it's good to know one end of your sweet potato from the other. There's a roundy bottom end here, and there's a pointy top end. And I found it best when planting them to plant them diagonally in the soil with the roundy end at the bottom and the top pointy end just below the surface. About 6 weeks after you plant your sweet potato tubers, they ought to sprout slips like these. And when they're about 6 or 9 inches long above the soil, it's time to harvest them and plant them out. you simply rip them away from the tuber and apart from themselves. So there we've got one. Two. Got three from that. And now we can eat that if we want to, so that's not wasted either. It's also a good idea just to tidy up the roots of each slip and just leave an inch of roots on the bottom, because they can harbour disease, the roots. So that's just, oops. Yes, they've been tidied up a little. The next one. Now quite often if you buy shop-bought sweet potatoes, they will be covered in wax, which prevents them from sprouting. So they're quite difficult to grow. So you need to either buy tubers specially to grow or buy the slips. But once you've started off the process and you save some every year, you can just keep them going year after year. There, another one. Now the tubers form at the base of these vines that ramble across the ground, and you get a whole cluster of tubers at the bottom of each vine. You rip the slip, tidy up the roots. There, that's tea sorted, and these are all our autumn and winter crop. Let's go and plant these out. Sweet potatoes will grow in poor soil, but deformed roots may develop in heavy clay, or long and stringy in sandy soil. If your soil is particularly poor, then it's good to dig in some compost, but avoid the nitrogen-rich fertilisers because that will produce lush vines or stunted tubers. But this soil is fairly okay. I am planting it with its favourite companions: mashua or air potato, that's another Central American crop that it's already familiar with; white star broccoli, although that's been a complete failure this year; amaranthus, the annual grain, although I'm using it like a perennial because it self-seeds so easily; and most importantly, feverfew, because feverfew keeps away pests for all these plants in this particular bed, particularly the flea beetle that the sweet potato is prone to. Sweet potatoes mature any time between 3 and 6 months, and they're extremely sensitive to frost. It's now late July, so I'm cutting it really fine with planting these out. Plant in full sun at least 3 to 4 weeks after the last frost has passed, when the soil has warmed up. Make holes about 6 inches deep and a foot apart. Bury the slips up to the bottom leaves. Press the soil down gently but firmly, and water well. Mulch the vines 2 weeks after planting to smother weeds, conserve moisture, and keep the soil loose for root development. Occasionally lift any of the longer vines, and that will prevent them from rooting where they touch the ground. If they do that, they'll form a clump of undersized tubers, when really you want them to concentrate on ripening the main crop at the base of the vine. It's also best not to overwater them, if at all in fact, because they can withstand dry spells a lot better than they can wet ones. They may rot in the ground if they get too wet. And having put this mulch down now, I'll probably just leave them for a couple of months and they'll be fine. Hopefully. Excellent. We're back in the autumn time for the sweet potato harvest. Goodbye for now. A splendid summertime to you. Same to you, sweet potatoes. Hello again. It's now mid-October, exactly 3 months after we first planted them, and there was the first frost last night. I knew I'd left it too late in the year to plant them, and they haven't done particularly well. Partly because they haven't had enough growing time, but more likely, I suspect, because of those feathered demons. Left unattended, they've had a little nibble here and there. Now you can harvest them as soon as the vines begin to yellow, and the longer you leave them in the ground, the greater the yield and the higher the vitamin content, ideally. But as soon as the frost has withered the leaves, then the tubers can quickly begin to rot, so you've got to get them out of the ground. Today is a nice sunny day, so we're going to dig them up and see what crop we've got. Use a garden fork to dig the tubers on a sunny day when the soil is dry. Now remember, the tubers can grow a foot or more from the base of the vine, so be careful when digging them up, because any nicks in the tubers will encourage spoilage and they won't store as well. However, there are no tubers at all on this first vine. It hasn't had long enough, but not all is wasted, because I can overwinter that in the greenhouse, stop it from freezing, and then plant it out again next springtime. Let's check the next one. Another one with nothing at its base. Well, that's now 3 to plant out next spring. Well, there are some good roots on it, but still no tubers. How disappointing. Now, assuming that you have had a crop, dry the tubers in the sun for several hours, then move them to a well-ventilated spot and keep them at around 30 degrees centigrade for 10 to 15 days if you can. After they're cured, store them at around 10 degrees with a humidity of around 75 to 80% ideally. Properly cured sweet potatoes will last for several months, though I have none to store. I don't have any from last year because I've eaten them all, which makes these little slips, or now mature vines, that I've dug up very precious. I think I'll put them in a pot to keep them inside over winter. Well, once again, thank you very much for watching. I wish you much better success with your sweet potato crop than I've had with mine. And yeah, I've learned something too this time. Bye!